consensus.
The illusion of a debate has been purchased with millions of dollars a year spent by a few of the largest and least responsible polluters who want to fool and confuse the American people.
Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
It's exactly the same thing that the tobacco companies did after the Surgeon General's report provided an end to the debate over smoking in health, and yet for decades they were able to purchase these quasi-scientists who would say things for money.
Well, can you say that you don't believe or there is no conclusive proof that cigarettes are harmful?
I would say that.
Today, everyone knows that cigarettes are highly addictive and can cause cancer, but many believe the cause of global warming has been obscured by a disinformation campaign waged by some of the big coal and oil companies. However, it is no secret among scientists what is responsible: a gas in our atmosphere known as carbon dioxide. But what's so bad about CO2? Carbon dioxide is the most prevalent of the so-called greenhouse gases. That's the part of our atmosphere that traps the sun's rays, allowing only about 30% of the sun's heat to escape back into space. Without our natural cozy blanket of CO2, most of the sun's heat would escape, and our planet would literally freeze over. On the other hand, if you added too much carbon dioxide, the atmosphere would absorb more and more heat until the Earth began to resemble Venus, average temperature 900 degrees Fahrenheit. By analyzing ancient Arctic ice samples, scientists have been able to track both the temperatures and the CO2 levels going back thousands of years. This data shows periods of natural warming and cooling, but one trend is indisputable. Whenever the carbon level rises, the temperature rises as well. Fast forward a few 100,000 years to 1900, when in the middle of one of those natural warm periods, something changed. Mankind suddenly started producing massive amounts of CO2.
Today, as your program airs, we in human civilization will put up into the atmosphere of the Earth more than 70 million tons of carbon dioxide or global warming pollution.
In one day?
In one day. Every single day.
As it has for millions of years, the planet's temperature is following the carbon dioxide level, but this time into uncharted territory.
If we look back over the last 20 years or so, 15 or thereabouts of the hottest years on record have been over that period. Virtually every year now is hotter than the previous year.
In the nation's capital, 100 degrees with humidity feels like 113.
Temperatures have hit dangerous levels from St. Louis to Memphis and from Raleigh to New York.
The first half of 2006 was the hottest ever recorded, and scientists agree that because of the CO2 already in the air, it will get hotter for at least another several decades. While that's very bad for us, it will be devastating for creatures like the penguin and the polar bear, whose habitat is literally melting away beneath their feet. New data shows that the Greenland and West Antarctic ice sheet are melting faster than anyone expected. Each holds over 600 quadrillion gallons of water and has the potential to cause a dramatic rise in sea level.
A year ago, it was thought that it would take 1,000, maybe up to 3,000 years for the Greenland ice sheet to melt. But research undertaken and published in just the last 12 months shows that the rate of melting, the rate of movement of the glaciers is accelerating so much that it could melt within a couple of centuries.
And some scientists believe that if we do not act immediately, it could be much sooner.
It could be 100 years from now, or it could be a few decades from now. And if you get even a significant fraction of that in the next half century, it's going to be big sea level changes.
If the Greenland ice sheet melts entirely, that's 20 feet of sea level rise. If the West Antarctic ice sheet collapses into the sea, that's another 20 feet of sea level rise. If both of those happen, 40 feet of sea level rise.
But I think scientists perhaps have not made clear just how serious the problem is. If we go down a business as usual course, we're really talking about a different planet.
When we return, a glimpse into the world of 2100 if global warming goes unchecked.
It would wipe out a lot of civilization as we know it.
In the winter of 2005, scientists made a frightening discovery. Increasing global temperatures were causing the Greenland ice sheet to melt at an alarming rate. With the help of satellite sensors, scientists saw that the glaciers had softened to the point that they risked a sudden collapse. If that happens, it would cause a catastrophic rise in sea level.
If we continue on business as usual, it will be this century, and very possibly before the middle of the century.
You mentioned the sea level would rise 20 feet alone if Greenland melted. How does that affect the world?
Well, that kind of an increase would inundate most of South Florida, most of South Louisiana, parts of Manhattan. In the low countries of Europe, like the Netherlands and Belgium, they would be almost completely covered.
In China, 250 million people would be underwater. Almost the entire nation of Bangladesh.
It's even been speculated that if the sea level rise occurred fast enough, some major cities might have to be abandoned, like for instance London, because it's too complex and too expensive to build the seawalls as high as are necessary.
Are you going to build a wall 25 meters high around Florida? I don't think so.
You're talking about hundreds of millions of refugees. I mean, that's huge. I mean, I think it's impossible to imagine a strain
It is.
on the system quite that big.
It really is. We have seen what happened when 100,000 people were displaced from New Orleans and the Gulf Coast communities. And it's difficult to imagine a couple of 100 million.
You're going to see mass migrations on a biblical scale. Obviously, the movement of people into new areas and the social ramifications of that are going to cause real problems.
As an estimated 1 billion people worldwide are forced inland by rising waters, the remaining habitable land will ironically be gripped by a different kind of water crisis.
In the West, 75% of the water comes from snowpack. We're going to lose that snowpack. We've built up cities, huge cities, that depend totally on that water.
With the planet's fresh water in short supply, it would become increasingly difficult to grow crops, setting off a worldwide food shortage, igniting a new set of crises.
The United Nations identifies something like 150 flashpoints where wars may be fought over water.
War, famine, and drought, coupled with an unstable climate system, could push the death toll into the billions.
This is a level of disaster that the world has never seen.
The future is by and large in our hands. We can choose between a modest warming and a radical warming.
The generation now alive, the generation that you see looking around you for the first time in history, is the generation that controls the destiny of the planet itself. And unless we are careful, our children and grandchildren may say to us that we ruined everything.
I think the greatest tragedy in the universe would be to realize that we have enough intellect and enough technology to save ourselves from a killer asteroid, but not enough intellect to save us from ourselves.
If we're smart enough to go to the moon, if we're smart enough to build the internet, we really ought to be smart enough to stop global warming.
Reducing carbon dioxide output is not rocket science. The technology needed for cleaner engines, efficient power, and sustainable development exists on the shelf today.
We're driving cars that get 20 miles to the gallon. They could be getting 80. That could save 3/4 of the oil we use in our cars. So there's so much that we can do. That's really simple.
In order to get the Earth's climate back on track, each of us individually and as a nation will need to learn how to meet our food, transportation, and electricity needs without filling the air with CO2. While cities like Portland, Oregon have made great strides in reducing emissions, and various states have introduced legislation to help reduce CO2, the problem has yet to be addressed on a national scale.
We haven't even tried to live sustainably yet, and that's what we will have to do. That's the lesson we have to take from this crisis that we're in.
But even if we find the political will to make the necessary changes in the United States, I mean, what about China and India? China's putting a new coal plant online every single week. So even if we change, if the rest of the world isn't doing it, what good is it going to do?
In order to convince China and India to help solve this problem, we have to provide leadership, moving first and gaining moral authority to require the others to join.
It's obviously not going to be easy, but I think it is possible. And I think that the reason it's possible is because when we look at the alternative, it's unfathomable. To allow ourselves to destroy the world as we know it is unfathomable. So we have to do what it takes to fix it.
We have to reverse global warming urgently, if we still can. The Earth is in much more danger from human action than from natural disasters. This is not a prediction of doom, but a wake-up call. We have to recognize the dangers and control them. I am an optimist, and I believe we can.
We live on a very tiny planet orbiting an average star in a massive galaxy, and remarkably, we're the only creatures that we know of that have started to unlock the secrets of the universe. Whether it is part of a grand design or just luck, it is amazing that we are here on this night thinking about our future. The speed of change has been so incredible. Our curiosity, our ingenuity, and technology have brought us to a crossroads. Unless we get hit by some cosmic bus, most of the serious problems we face we can cope with and survive. We have the power to shape our future. The question is, will we? I'm Elizabeth Vargas. Thanks for watching, and good night.
To purchase a home video of this program, go to abcnews.com.
Well, I want the next generation, like my kids, to be able to live in a safe world.
Well, why should I be afraid? I can't do anything about it.
People in general and nations, and I would think the world, come together in the time of challenge and difficulties.
We're on this rock and we're floating, and we gotta work this thing out.
Thursday, September 21st.
Meredith?
A new season and a new night.
I know you're under pressure. You have a choice to make.
The season premiere of Grey's Anatomy, Thursday, September 21st, only on ABC.
Coming up on 7 News at 11, why the Lackawanna Municipal Housing Authority is under fire tonight. And several people are injured after the van they were on flipped over on the thruway.